Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of what's called climate justice, and it views, or is supposed to be, claims to be, viewing the climate change epidemic, and we're all going to die tomorrow from that, but the climate change epidemic through a lens of Marxist social justice. So the claim is that it's people, black, brown people and lesbians and whatever will suffer disproportionately as a result of climate change, and therefore we have to look at climate justice, which is climate change added, with Marxist concepts of social justice added to it, so that they suffer more the minority groups suffer more as a result of climate change. It's difficult to arrive at that, but they can go to, say, some dirt poor third world country where we're fishing or it could be, say, an island where fishing is the main industry. So people quite naturally live right on the coast, so they can collect the fish. Now the argument will be, well, the sea levels are rising. There's a lot of dispute on that, but sea levels are rising. The poor people live right on the coast, right on the edge of the coast. Therefore, the increasing sea level affects these third world peasants. And so shall we get them to move a little bit further inland up to higher ground? No, because if we do that, they're not victims anymore. So we have to have the victimhood. And so thus is born climate justice. Now, it's, as you can imagine, it's a scam and a grift, but that doesn't matter. USaid, through the deep state globalist cabal, has been funding this climate change justice activism. They spend billions and billions of dollars on it, which, if there was a real problem, wouldn't they be directing that money to materially assisting the people who are supposed to be suffering? No. It's activism. We want white kids from Western universities be on the street screaming and placard waving, and to turn it into an issue. It's a non-issue, but we can invent it. We can create an issue out of it just by having a lot of kids running around waving placards. Now, to do that, we need a big ground game. We need a lot of NGOs on the ground and people and organisers and money to move the kids around, and the placards have to be printing. There's a lot of money to be spent here, a lot of organising, so we need to funnel money into these NGOs. And if there's enough of them running around waving placards, then most people are going to think, well, it must be an issue. I mean, gee whiz, look at all those kids. And we don't tell them it's all funded by NGOs and USaid and the globalists, and that we don't tell them that. We have to give this impression, we try and give out this impression that it's all grassroots. These kids are concerned about the future. We are the future, and you're taking it away from us, you fucking Nazis. So this is the gig. Now, how much money is being channeled from USaid and the activist NGO groups and so on into Australian activism in climate justice, this invented problem, manufactured problem? I don't know how much it is. That the claim is that, or depending on whose numbers you look at, it's well over $100 million US annually is coming into Australia. Now, that's being diverted in two areas. Some of it's going straight to the NGOs and the activists and the stirrers and the agitators, most of whom are incumbent and embedded within universities all over Australia. So they're clearly just a student rent-a-mob type sort of activism group. But then a significant portion of it is actually going into what once were independent, impartial, scientific meteorological organisations that would scientifically and using scientific method examine weather trends, patterns, and so on. They weren't ideological or captured by activists, but those days are long gone. These organisations are not just partially but completely captured by activists. Science and the scientific method be damned. These outfits are there to push and justify the propaganda, Dr. So-and-so and so, with 5 million PhDs says that climate justice is the most pressing issue. So people think, wow, if a PhD says it, it must be fucking true. But of course, all these people are activists, and they're on the payroll, and they're being quite richly rewarded for coming out with these Armageddon-like apocalyptic type pronouncements. But the Trump administration, quite rightly and quite reasonably and quite necessarily, is cutting off these funds, and even to the point where they're going to research organizations who are receiving these funds and say, hey, what do you guys have a climate justice policy? How many black lesbians are, and so on. And they're really going after it and asking, I believe, or as I understand it, at least the hard questions. So look, if you want to stay doing science, then we're happy that you continue getting the money. But if you're off on activism and ideological, madness and insanity, and black lesbians this, climate change that, and all the polar bears are dead, you're going down that path, then you're not going to get any money anymore. Now, instead of people, you'd think that, like, if you're a research organisation that had lost your way and become activist, and you were running the risk of losing, tens of millions of dollars in supposed research grants, I mean, if it was me, I would sit down and go, okay, well, look, okay, we've had a good run. We've been able to play the activist card for decades now, but look like it's come to an end. And if we want to keep this money, and we do, then we want to go back to hard science, facts and hard science, and just get rid of all this ideology and all this madness, and get back to our core mission, which was our original mission, to make professional, qualified scientific commentary on meteorological issues. But instead, they've gone the other way. They're doubling down on the ideology and saying it's outrageous that you should question climate justice, and how dare you question it, and how dare you want us to actually go back to the scientific method, and we're ideological fanatics, and don't you forget it, and we're entitled to get lots of money to engage in these ideological fantasies. So they're actually not that they're doubling down, and they're even claiming they're victims, and they've got the hide to claim that it's the Trump people that are being ideological, not them. They're climate justice fanatics and funding street waving placard waving mobs on the street and this sort of thing. No, they're not ideological. It's him, Trump. He's the one. Oh, fuck. That's how insane these people have become, and how entitled they think they are. So there you go. The hopefully the Trump administration cuts off all the funding. Now, that the total amount, again, is the total amount of money being shoveled into these, because they put it up as it's grassroots. Look, these college kids, look how concerned they are about. They're marching on the street, they're screaming, and go, oh, it must be a big issue. Of course, none of it was. None of those people are on the street organically or naturally or because they believe it an issue. They're all, every single fucking one of them is a paid up activist. And the administration and the logistical support to get that many people out on the street, again, the placard waving and so on, the T-shirts, the whole thing, that takes a lot of money, a lot of organising. The idea that it's just a bunch of kids who are so concerned they get together to march, that's bullshit, absolute bullshit. And a couple of years ago, I guess it was, I was in downtown Sydney on a weekend, and one of these mobs, I think it was Climate Justice, actually came, it was Climate something, I think it was Climate Justice, came by, and just out of academic interest really on my part, I was asked random people who were marching what they were there for and what the issue was. They had no idea. They didn't have a clue. All these outraged people running around waving placards, and they don't even know why they're there. That's the level of actual outrage. But they're hey, they feed us, they give us water. They bus us in from wherever, and we get a day out, and we get to hang out with some people, and there's a hot chick here who am I getting on to, or a hot guy, and so or if you're a lesbian, another hot chick. So they're there for sort of social go along with the crowd, sheep going with the herd of sheep type reasons. They're not there because they know or understand or believe in anything that's supposed to be the primary purpose of the march. But if someone says, look, we'll bus you in, it won't cost you anything. Oh, what about lunch? No, we'll supply lunch. We'll supply everything. Well, I'm going to get thirsty walking out. No, we'll supply you with water. And so on and so forth. And we'll ferry you back again to wherever we picked you up from. So it won't cost them a penny to be out there all day, and they get a free T-shirt and so on. Hey, what's wrong with that? So hopefully this will come to it, but it demonstrates that every piece of street activism we see today, every piece, in support of the globalist cabal, at least, all of it is funded, paid for by rent a mob. Now, on top of that, the NGOs that are omnipresent around these things, the NGOs that supply the professional, activist, agitator personnel, they're all listed as charities, and they shouldn't be, because they're not charities, not even close. And so any donations that are made to them, they don't have to pay tax on them, and there's a much lower standard, as in prudential standards, a much lower standard of financial reporting because they're charities. And so they're able to get away with a lot, but they're not charities, and this needs to be cleaned up. And I hope the Trump administration cleans this up too. If you're a charity, fine, you're doing charitable work. Okay, well, make sure the charitable work's defined. Maybe you're running a soup kitchen for the homeless or something. That's charitable work. But this idea that charitable work means you run, mobs on the street to wave placards. No, that's not charitable work. And you're not a charitable organisation. You're an activist NGO, and you will lose your charity status. And I hope that's the next step the Trump administration goes to. Being attached to us today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.